We have shuffled to the Zerg section of the track, ladies and gentlemen. That must mean there's a Zerg present, at least one of them. Neblime versus Hamster. And you know what? We've got 3 matches here. Omnivore, Titanforge, and Pantheon. You saw Titanforge earlier in a Terran versus Terran that was maybe a little bit on the silly side. This time around, we'll be seeing it with different players, different races. And not only that, but Omnivore, which is a map that I made, and Pantheon, a map that Veek made, these are going to be featured along with Titanforge in the upcoming March Invitational. So we'll get a nice little taste of what map, sort of like what kind of stuff you might see on these maps and what kind of gameplay these might lend to. Let's kick things off on this particular match. So we have Neblime here in the north as the yellow Zerg and the blue, deep blue Protoss of Hamster. He's actually off racing this time around. So that's interesting. And it looks like Neblime has mentioned that, oh wait, I've actually seen this map before and I know a little bit about it, but not very much. Meanwhile, I assume Hamster has never played it. It is a relatively new map. It's the most recent Melee map that I have created as of the time of recording. And we will have to see what ends up going down with it. Hamster has signed up for the Invitational, but he is a ringer for Group A. We will see if that ends up being required. Meanwhile, we might have Veek subbing in for B and C. I'm not sure yet if he'll be available to do that. And of course, Shambler isn't subbing in for Group D. He actually is in Group D. But either way, we will see what ends up happening. and Neblime thinks it's a mistake because the Class 1s will 4-0. I am honestly not so sure about that. I mean, I've seen Shambler's Terran. I've seen Veek's Terran. I am not 100% sure that it's down to player skill. But hey, we're going to find out. We're going to find out. I do think that there's a lot of room for early aggression out of the players that have signed up. You know, there's people like Biddy and Alexander who like to end the games really fast. And that is, of course, the one of the key points there. Now, this is an interesting Hacharosk placement for Neblime here. It's not exactly covering the ramp. I mean, the Kagra will spread, but it's interesting anyway. Neblime now scouting. Looks like he's headed... I wonder where he's headed, actually. When we hold Alt, we can actually see the order lines now. I've edited my config so that that particular change will be reflected, because sometimes it can be noisy on the screen when I select many units. So we'll hold Alt to see that, and you can kind of see where the units are moving. I wonder what Hamster's build order is looking like. He has gone Gateway, but it doesn't look like he's made a unit just yet. Meanwhile, maybe he might be going 1 gate into Nexus or something to that effect. We'll have to see. Neblime maybe was trying to take a look at what's going on over here, but he actually cannot get through that. You need to harvest it with a couple of workers. There's the Nexus coming down, actually expanding before his opponent. Dracodon almost done. And because of this in-base hatch and then into a pool, Neblime actually doesn't have like an immediate response that he can provide for the greedy opener that has been gone over here. And here comes the Dracodon. Just going to make short work of this Droleth, particularly with the cliff advantage. A little bit of stutter stepping. Oh, maybe not even necessary. Look at that, because of the way that the unit moved. If it had gone up here, then it probably would have escaped, actually. This mineral field here, plus this doodad, are there to try to allow you to sort of funnel ground units in a little bit. Particularly useful versus Zerg. Meanwhile, we do have a Kagra, Kagran Sedient being deployed over here. This will undoubtedly turn into a Circuith. Quasi's now storming out of the front lines. There is a neutral anchor over here. That will end up being replaced with the old graphic at some point, but I haven't actually done that. That's a per map base change because it's actually a different unit ID, but functionally they operate the same. It just visually doesn't have the landing pads so that you don't look at it and think, oh, I can lift that off. And of course, these mineral fields here in the middle of the map provide a pretty good position here for funnels and such. As you can see here, the Dracodons they're messing up these Zerg here. Look at that. A little bit of Burrow Micro. I like the Scribe coming up here just to sow a little bit of chaos. Could have maybe even revealed that wounded Quasilisk. As it stands, I actually don't think that these will get very far. It looks like maybe one of them has escaped. And so, not a very cost-efficient trade here for Neblime. He's struggling ever so slightly. Nonetheless, we do, of course, have dominance from the Protoss in the early game thanks to their units. We do have an embassy warping in, a couple of idle workers as this expansion pens coming online momentarily, no doubt. What is Hamster thinking at this point? He's already fixed up his workers. There is one idling by the geyser. It's a little bit hard to see sometimes. One of the things that I wanted to do was like light up the worker while they're harvesting, and I haven't yet actually done that. So there's some weird iScript stuff. The way that the animation code is handled in Brood War can be a little bit tricky at times. So even with the Cosmonarchy changing and improving so many things, there are some details that are just you can't really get past. Nonetheless, this Quasilisk-fueled anchor, this Quasilisk-filled anchor, is helping this hill remain within the area of Neblime, the domain of him, you could say. Obviously, these mineral fields are kind of, interesting to look at, but basically they funnel the melee attackers down a certain path, and also the way that you can enter and exit the structure. So until you deplete them by harvesting them, then they don't have any collision at all. Finally, we're going to be seeing another expansion attempt here. The atlases have burned down, so those will, you can see that on the minimap over here, but those do indeed burn down and then turn into a pathway that you can take, and you can open that pathway up even further. It's kind of like, if you know the Brood War maps that have eggs on them, it's like if the eggs basically burned down and destroyed themselves after a certain amount of time. That's essentially what it is. I feel like that was probably even used at some point for ASL maps and stuff, but I can't really remember off the top of my head if it actually was used. I know they have like stacked Zelnaga towers and stuff. So it looks like there are a flock of Nathracors getting ready to maybe swoop in and do some damage, or at the very least scout around, but right now they are maintaining position. A witness has arrived and will scope out that there's nothing in the interior 12 o'clock, and meanwhile, just saturation happening. Even worker counts at this point. The embassy obviously can and will be making scribes at various points, although Hamster right now cutting workers. I'm wondering what he's looking into affording. He has dropped the Nexus up here to the high ground base. These little in bases here probably help Protoss the least, because Protoss have to drop a Nexus. However, with the new changes, you can make artisans, and artisans, the advanced worker for the Protoss, they don't warp structures in anymore. But what they do accomplish is they harvest resources without needing a town center nearby, so they just return it after a channel. And so that's actually pretty interesting. I don't think we are liable to see it because I don't know if Hamster is even aware that that's a thing. I'm not sure how on top of the game he is as far as practicing Protoss. Obviously, he was a Zerg. He played Zerg quite a bit and got to the finals of the last two tournaments. The only two tournaments he's placed, he's never placed worse than second place, and he's never placed better than second place either, but it's still pretty damn impressive for him to go into the grand finals 2 tournaments in a row. I'm looking forward to him in Acropolis. Now, we've got a dozen of the Nathracors. They are charging in, trying to get rid of this Warden. However, they are taking a very heavy punishment here. A couple of them have fallen. There were some more that trickled in the meantime. And unfortunately for Hamster, I mean, he lost a couple of workers there. That's not really the biggest of deals. It doesn't feel like he really punished the presence there because it was kind of scattered fire. Now, he does have a Stargate out, so he can make a land effect if he feels like the Zerg is going to continue committing heavy into air. It's very similar to Corsair versus Mutalisk in stock Starcraft for PvZ, but the build orders in Cosmonarchy aren't actually mapped out just yet. And Neblime is just experimenting, I think, because the Vornath Pond, which is an evolution of the pool, as you might guess just by looking at it, when you combine that with the Nathracors, that's a lot of Vespene that's expended on that, and he kind of needs to be able to get some sort of impact as a result. So he's just going to walk all the way past, or fly all the way past these Wardens, and he will indeed reveal that the back corner has been taken. He obviously can't really do anything right now because he's hit it before any workers have really arrived, so he steals one worker away and then flies away yet again. Here's the land effect giving chase. The land effect has been buffed to have a little bit more armor penetration and a little bit better costs, so it's a bit cheaper to get out, and that's part of the additional idea, like in general, is to try to make it so that air dominance is less of a thing, as it was something that repeatedly made itself known within previous versions of Cosmonarchy. So the balance adjustments that we've made here have made it a little bit more, I guess you could say, aggressive towards shutting down air if you can, and that makes air a lot more about harassment, right? That being said, these two Wardens over here, steep investment in minerals, obviously could have gone anywhere else into, maybe more production or more units. And talking about spending money, Neblime was over 1,300 in the mineral department and still hasn't fully saturated many of his bases, but he has just dropped the Iral Iris, so that's going to spend his gas. When you see players banking more than like 500 Vespene as Zerg, at least in the first 10 minutes or 15 minutes or so, it's probable that they're going for the tier 2. At the same time, though, this anchor has been cleared out. We do indeed have a bit of a siege fomenting over here. However, of course, the land effects are activating Disruption Field, and that's very different than Disruption Web because it attaches to the unit and deactivates. You can see exactly what's happening over here. All the units are completely stuck, but this Wraith is still firing, and that will eventually pop them. If Neblime was paying a little bit more attention, he actually could have just moved his units out of it because it only disables weaponry, not movement. But nonetheless, I think his static defense was sufficient in dealing with this situation. Some nice ideas out of the land effect positioning for Hamster, but he's not even able to clear that Ovaleth at the end. And that does mean that, oh, look at this. He's looking to expand into 9 o'clock. That's interesting. Wasn't expecting that. Meanwhile, up at 10, we have Neblime expansion coming online. So, yeah, this is the first time I've actually seen a player versus player match on Omnivore. So it's very interesting to see how they're taking control of the map and considering their options. Zerg loves these kinds of in-bases, but the idea is that obviously if you spend more money to try to secure those, then you might lose out on tempo elsewhere on the map, like this interior 6 or interior 12 won't be able to be taken, and indeed these heavy double gas bases in the middle of the map, and that's like 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock, roughly speaking. So it's interesting to see those be taken by Hamster. I'm definitely interested in seeing where he goes next. He does have a heavy amount of land effects, and by the way, you can just seal this entirely with one pylon if you want to, but I'm interested in seeing what Hamster decides to do in the meantime. Obviously, it's worth noting that pylons in Cosmonarchy are smaller. They have obviously less durability, but they're cheaper and they warp in faster because there is no such thing as supply anymore. Ground army rotation coming up to 9 o'clock as Nathracors fly over and scout that this path is not actually fully walled. The land effects are in the area, and these 3 Nathracors are, well, there's only 3 of them, right? So they're definitely not going to be able to do too much there. You can see them get chewed up by the now 6 land effects, and some Gladiuses are on the way. I always say Gladiuses instead of like Lady I. Hopefully you guys can forgive me for that. I just find it more consistent. And otherwise, if I say Gladii, you might not even know that the Gladius exists. So yes, the Gladius is a unit. It's pretty interesting. Basically, when it fires on a unit, it puts a channel on them. And as long as the Gladius remains in the area, or a Gladius remains in the area, the channel will eventually proc and start bouncing that attack infinitely to some other target. So maybe we'll get to see it in action here. There's a pretty scary Protoss throng happening over here as it starts to foment over towards the static defense. And here comes the land effects to disable that static defense. The workers trying to move forward here as battle units, and I feel like Neblime has been caught unawares. There was this witness, of course, to see that many more bases were being set up. Some more land effects could be swarmed over here, and indeed they are, just to see if they can sow some discord in the middle of the line. A lot of these anti-air units getting caught up while the Zethracors charge forward, but the static defense, though it is disabled, is being remorphed. We'll talk about that in just a moment after this ground army sort of finishes off. We do have some heavy defenses coming online at 9 o'clock, so I don't think there can really be a punish here for Neblime. He's not even looking at his army, he's just trying to macro up. When he does pay attention again, he might realize, oh, yeah, most of my damage over here in the Hydras is just standing underneath the disable. So, yeah, he's kiting backwards now, seeing if he can't deal with that. Of course, Hamster just relocates it a little bit, but he does see these static defenses coming online at the interior 12, and here come the Gladiuses. So we're going to be able to catch their bounces there. If the unit dies while under the channel, it's instantly procced, so that's why you're seeing the bounces. And that came in just at the nick of time because the reinforcements will not be able to do too much. Now, at the same time, there's only 1 land effect left, and there's way more static defense than that 1 land effect can handle. We do actually have some tier 2 static defenses coming online. Those cost some Vespine now, where previously in Cosmonarchy's history they did not. And here's the Vilgoricor. It's not a very exciting looking graphic, I'll tell you that much, but when it actually gets hit, it has some exciting behaviors now. We'll see if we can see that in action. The Vilgoricor will release a small cloud of Carapace Swarm, which is the renamed version of the Stratholeth Defiler ability. Now, we are going to have some capping of the geysers. We do indeed have some more Gladiuses on the way, some Legionnaires, Dracodons on the way for Hamster. I'm just seeing what the rest of the map is going to look like, because surely Neblime now knows that this base is here. He did send some Zethracors out there. No other base has been taken, though, and there are a couple of units sort of scattered about, keeping watch on certain bases. Bottom right is being taken by Hamster. It's funny that we have an off-race rematch of where Neblime is playing Zerg instead of Terran, Hamster is playing Protoss instead of Zerg, and these are the players that were in the previous round. And there's the Carapace Swarm that I was talking about. A little bit underwhelming, considering he wasn't really able to use it too much. And he's actually focusing down the Vilgoricors before their channel can complete, so the Carapace Swarm is not actually proccing for very much. Meanwhile, right, the Vithralisks are out. These are absolutely going to run roughshod over the Gladiuses. You do have to watch out for them. They are a little bit faster now. The The Zealots doing their best to try to hold off the ground army. And here comes some more, some more anti-air as well as general ground gateway units. But Bactylisks and Zephyr Cores, this swarm is looking really, really strong. Again, there's no land effects, so they can't really deal with the stacked air as well. And on top of it all, the Bactylisks are going to have a bit of a front line. As soon as these Zets get into the fight, we got some more Hydras streaming in as well. I think Neblime can break this army, at least force the Gladiuses to fall back, because they cannot contend with the high range of the Bactylisk, nor the high damage or DPS in general of the Hydralisk. And they do have to fall back. There's only the one engram over here. We got some more starting to warp in now, and we even have a Matroleth making its way into the fight. We might even see the new infestation behavior, but we'll see. It looks like it's going to get focused down instead, so not actually going to happen after all. More units streaming in. At this point, Hamster is in a real serious danger of being broken, because he wasn't able to actually turn his attacks into something that damaged the economy of Neblime, and instead he allowed his opponent Zerg to get up to what is essentially, 6 bases effectively. Maybe it's closer to 5, because like this base is like a half a base, and this base is like the other half of that base, and so it's not exactly 6 bases, it's more like 5, but still it's a crazy economy. Got over 100 workers there for both players. Just a moment ago, Hamster has started to fall and hemorrhage those. Now taking the interior 3 o'clock base there. That is going to allow Neblime to even further run away with this game, it feels like. And this whole time I've been waiting, watching, looking for more tech. What exactly is Hamster going to add on? But he kind of seems stuck on the idea of going after more Stargate units and more Gateway units. And so the Carapace Swarms, they're absorbing up to 100 damage, which is why they're only there for a brief period of time. But I think it's still going to be enough to just buy a little bit more effective health, especially for these wounded or these low HP units like the Quasilisk and stuff. Yeah, I mean, pretty impressive composition at the end there for Neblime. He was able to mix and match and defeat Hamster, who didn't really evolve his composition past the mid-game. Like, as soon as he got the Gladiuses, that was kind of like the last unit that he teched into, if you will. So I'm interested in seeing if both of these players continue to play these off races. Obviously, Neblime has been enjoying Zerg for a bit longer than Hamster has been enjoying Protoss, but we're going to have to wait and see, and I'm not even sure if the rest of the matches are going to be quite like this. So join us in the next video, where we're going to be going over the following 2 matches in this set. GG. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, jump into our Discord server, donate to us on the Coffee link in the description. You know the drill. We'll see you next time.